The Whitmer campaign, who came out and named their lieutenant governor running mate, Garlin Gilchrist, who actually was on the show with us just recently. Go ahead and take a look. Say hello to Garlin Gilchrist. You might know him because he ran a close race for Detroit City Clerk, and he is now the head of the University of Michigan's new Center for Social Media Responsibility. Welcome, Garlin. And your name is being floated about as a lieutenant governor candidate, possibly. We might get to that a little later on in the show, as we're always mining for news. Would you be interested in public office again?
I am thankful for the support. I'm humbled to be considered, and I would consider it.
All right, had to get that in there. All right, so that was percolating back in April when I asked him about this possibility, and it came true this week. So, Stephen, give me what your take is on him being Gretchen Whitmer's running mate.
Yeah, I talked to both of them the morning after it happened on the radio show, and they both seem very confident that he helps her in a couple of key ways. One is with Detroit voters who did not choose Gretchen in the primary. They chose the third place finisher. They didn't even choose Abdul El Sayed. I think that represents a very interesting challenge for the campaign. They think Garlin Gilchrist, who is sort of from the same wing of the party as Shri Thanadar and Abdul El Sayed, helps firm up those votes. The fact that he's very active in Detroit and in sort of get out the vote efforts in circles, they think is going to make a big difference. They also seem to think that his background in innovation is one of the things that they are going to be able to sell. That this is somebody who is sort of on the cutting edge of social media innovation, voting innovation, all these kind of other things that he's kind of worked on. I would expect that they'll put a lot of that sort of out there as a reason that voters should trust him. I think on the flip side, this is somebody with zero elected office experience, and
even though he ran a close race for clerk, I mean, you still say, but he lost.
He lost,
you know,
and he never had a chance to govern. He's not been in the legislature, which, you know, the LG's position, historically at least, has been the person who goes over and pulls the levers to get the governor's agenda through the legislature. In some ways, it's almost like a whip position. Is Garlin Gilchrist going to be good at that? I don't know, and I don't know that maybe you even cast him in that role if you're Gretchen Whitmer, because you have a lot of legislative experience. So it's a risk in that way, right?
I mean, he does have a legislative job, and he doesn't have any.
Well, he has to be there, right?
Yeah, he doesn't have any experience in that area. I mean, that's not a deal killer. I question how much he's going to be able to turn out the Detroit vote. You know, he's sort of Urkelish, and he's not ever. I mean, he grew up in Farmington. He didn't grow up in the city. He hasn't run office here.
So he was born on the same block where I lived as a kid.
Yeah,
so
is it possible that you've gone to school with everybody else? I was like, I went to school with it. Yeah.
I mean, his family moved to the suburbs at some point, but he spent most of his life working in the city.
His history's not been in the city until he ran for clerk. He was off the radar screen. I don't know that he's the guy who gets Detroiters up on election morning and gets them out to the polls. I don't know that he has an organization in the city. There were some lawmakers, former lawmakers and others in the city, might have been a better choice in terms of doing a get out the vote drive in the city, which is the only thing she really needs him for in the campaign.
You know, I think it's really interesting because we had the discussion about Bill Schuette's running mate, Lisa Lyons, last week, and making the point that she's from the west side of the state, a part of the state that you thought that Bill Schuette would be okay with. And so Gretchen Whitmer has chosen a running mate, again, that people would say, well, she should be okay in the city of Detroit.
Yeah, no, she's not, and that third place finish. I would push back a little about your description of Garlin. I mean, Urkelish is a pretty dismissive term. This is a wildly intelligent, highly accomplished intellectual, and we should not be poking fun at that.
That's absolutely
an African American in the city,
necessarily,
and that does play in the city.
A attractive politician.
I think that I think that plays pretty well in
how much he's played in political circles.
So if you think of how close he came to defeating one of the most popular elected officials in the city of Detroit. I mean, he did not do it, but coming as close as he did to Janice shows that he appeals to a lot of people who are, you know, every-time voters in the city. The question is whether he can get to the voters who don't turn out all the time, people who turned out for like Abdul and Shri in that sort of record-setting election, are they going to move over to
motivated
Garlin?
He's not
for
going to
that,
have
yeah.
But his
$7 million
politics-
to turn him out the way Shri
But his
did.
politics align very nicely with both Abdul and Shri, and so I don't know that he's going to have all that much time closing the deal with them.
And he's
for
Duggan's
November.
guy, you got to assume.
And he's Duggan's guy. That'll help.
Let me ask this: what's going to go on this weekend at these conventions? Anything different, or anything that we're going to see, or will be
know.
whispered about?
Be a lot of cheering and stuff. You know, you got to look at on the Republican side. You know, there's still some resentment of Beth Clement, the Supreme Court justice, who didn't follow her
kill the
instructions
gerrymandering,
in killing that ballot proposal. And some folks got mad and wanted to deny her the nomination. She's going to get the nomination. The question is how much animosity she's going to face, whether she'll get financial support. That's the only drama I see at the Republican convention. Democratic, they pretty much settled everything back in the spring.
I feel like they wanted to get their
Right.
act together a little earlier this time, not have a big fight at the convention over Secretary of State and Attorney General.
That's all set.
Yeah.
That's all done. So, I mean, unless something surprising happens.
I do think that there is going to be a lot of whispering about Donald Trump, though. I know you said you made the point that it's going to be more about centrist views and trying to get independent voters to come over to the Republican side come the fall. But I do think, though, that there's still going to be a referendum on Trump in this election, and there is going to be some conversation about how close should we be standing with him, and if we should start to distance ourselves away a little
Or
bit.
maybe, you know, if you look at Michigan, which elected Donald Trump president, maybe you'll have some people saying, we want to move closer toward him to get that same coalition of voters out. I mean, we're looking at it from this point of view.
Right.
But, you know, I would say if you went to Macomb County and talked to voters there, they're not so anxious for their politicians to run away from Trump.
And that is what is on the list of to-do items for us this fall, is to get out and to talk to some voters from a lot of different areas.